In New
West
Jersey,
Hall.
there lies an abandoned university dormitory, deserted since the 1970s after a mass disappearance that was never explained. Legends whisper that on nights when the moon wanes, faint laughter drifts through its corridors, mingling with the sound of footsteps wandering aimlessly in the dark.
This place gives me the creeps.
When a group
Come
of
on,
curious
we'll be fine.
students chose to spend the night there, filming a documentary, they did not realize they had awakened the thing entombed within the walls. By morning, only their bodies remained, perfectly intact, yet their faces contorted by grotesque, frozen smiles. Those smiles were not their own. They bore the mark of Labu, an ancient entity that sows silence through the horror of its grin. The car stopped before the abandoned dormitory, a silent monolith rising like cold stone amid a campus shrouded in mist. Emily Harris, 38, professor of folklore, stepped out. Her breath curled in white vapor as her eyes lifted to the dark windows, sealed behind cobwebs and dust. 20 years earlier, she had been a student here. Though the building had already been closed by the time she arrived, forever etched in memory as a forbidden place no one spoke of. With her was Mark Benson, 40, an independent filmmaker. He carried his camera with a mix of eagerness and unease. Behind them followed 3 students, restless with excitement and joining the project. They believed this trip was nothing more than a chance to document an urban legend. The whispers surrounding the mass disappearance of 1972. But Emily knew that within these walls lurked something far more dreadful. The wooden door shrieked as it gave way, releasing a flood of damp, frigid air. The hallway stretched forward, its peeling paint like rotting flesh. Each step they took reverberated, echoing into an endless void. Faded student portraits still clung to the walls, their smiles warped beneath a veil of dust, twisted into strange, frozen grimaces. That first night, they laid out their sleeping bags in a large room.
Students were found
Mark
intact.
positioned his
mouths
camera
stretched
toward the
into
corridor,
unnatural grins.
hoping to capture any
No
sign
signs
of
of
movement.
violence.
Emily sat by the window, sifting through old records of the case. In a yellowed newspaper clipping, her eyes caught a line stark in its brevity. Students were found intact, mouths stretched into unnatural grins. No signs of violence. Around midnight, as the others slept, Emily heard a sound. At first, she thought it was merely wind whistling through cracks. But when it came again, her body froze. It was not the wind. It was a steady, deliberate clicking, as though teeth were grinding just beside her ear. She held her breath, straining to listen. The sound seeped from within the walls, threading through the corridor, reverberating through the very bones of the building like a hidden pulse. Emily's gaze swept the darkness, and in the faint light, she swore she saw the cracks along the wall, bending, curving into the outline of an immense jaw slowly parting. The air thickened with the certainty of a presence in the hallway, watching, smiling, breathing with them. Emily clutched the papers in her hands, her mind sharp with one dreadful truth. This was no legend. They had awakened something. Nay, Sheikh. The next morning, pale light filtered weakly through the dust-choked windows, illuminating the desolate corridor. Emily opened her eyes, her chest still heavy from the night's strange symphony of sounds. She sat up, stepped out of her sleeping bag, and instantly felt the suffocating stillness. No soft snoring, no restless chatter of young students, only silence pressing against her eardrums like a weight. When she turned, her heart seized. On the cot in the corner, Rachel's body lay motionless. Her eyes were wide open, void of pain, yet her face was stretched into a grotesque smile. unnaturally long, her lips frozen in a hideous arc. No wounds, no blood. Simply life gone, leaving behind a flawless shell and a hollow grin. Mark rushed forward, panic in his movements, camera in hand. He tried to capture the scene, but when he played the tape back, the image fractured into streaks of black and white static. Only the sound remained intact. A jagged, repetitive clatter, sharp as bone against bone. The grinding of countless unseen jaws hidden deep within the walls. The two remaining students stood paralyzed, terror etched in their eyes. Emily forced herself to remain composed, though her hands trembled as memory clawed at her. The records from 1972 had spoken of deaths exactly like this. Bodies untouched, preserved as though in sleep, yet every face marred by that unmistakable smile. She knelt beside Rachel, staring at the twisted expression. That smile was not the girl's own. It belonged to something else, something that had used her features as a mask, a message to those who dared intrude. The room grew oppressive. From the ceiling, flakes of paint began to fall, revealing a network of hairline cracks spreading across the plaster. They bent and curved, intersecting until they resembled the outline of clenched teeth. Emily's breath caught. The building itself was changing, reshaping into the vast maw of something monstrous, and Rachel was only the beginning. In that moment, she understood. The dormitory was never abandoned. It was alive. It was smiling through the faces it had stolen, and they had only brushed the surface of the truth. Ah, Adi. Arleus. A heavy silence weighed over the dormitory. Rachel's body had been shrouded beneath an old blanket, yet her frozen smile lingered in the minds of the others like a brand no one dared forget. The two remaining students whispered about leaving, but Emily forced them into calm. The blizzard outside had sealed every path. They were trapped. Survival depended on unearthing whatever secrets the building kept buried. Emily led the group into the basement. Darkness clung thickly to the air, their flashlights sweeping across splintered chairs and file cabinets smothered in dust. Amid the rot and debris, Emily found a leather-bound notebook, its cover torn and frayed. When she opened it, the stench of mold and ash rose, but the words within, trembling, uneven strokes, were still legible. It was the journal of a student from 1972, the sole survivor of that year's tragedy. The first entry made her breath catch. We heard laughter in our sleep. When I opened my eyes, my friends were smiling at me, but it was not their smile. They did not speak. They only sat there, waiting. The pages that followed spiraled into terror. Each night brought the sound of teeth gnashing within the walls. The writer described it as a choir of bone and enamel. One student vanished inside the bathroom, leaving behind only damp air and a mirror etched with a strange face, its grin stretching unnaturally from cheek to cheek. The final entries were broken, the ink warped by tears. I escaped, but when I looked back, they were all still there, motionless, their smiles frozen like masks. I know one day it will come for me, because even now, the grinding teeth echo in my ears every night. Mark filmed close-ups of each page, his face drained of color. The two students pressed into one another, whispering, unable to raise their heads. Emily finished reading, her chest tightening as though the basement itself were crushing in around her. The cracks in the walls here were not ordinary. They bent into curved arcs, converging like the joints of a vast, unseen smile. Then the familiar sound returned. The grinding of teeth, louder now, heavier, as though emanating from the journal itself. Emily snapped it shut, but the noise swelled, reverberating through the basement, circling them with a suffocating pulse. The flashlights flickered, then died. In the darkness, Mark muttered the name of one of the students, but only faint laughter replied. When the light returned, one of the two was gone. Only a backpack remained on the floor, its zipper torn open, and on the damp concrete, a slender curve had been etched, as though a new smile had just been carved into the world. Emily staggered, her heart hammering. She understood now. The journal was not merely a record. It was an invitation, and the fresh disappearance proved that the cycle of 1972 had begun again. The grinding no longer came in scattered bursts. It thundered all at once, as though hundreds of jaws were clenching around them. Emily dragged Mark and the last remaining student, Lisa, up from the basement. But when they emerged into the corridor, the dormitory was no longer the same. Cracks along the walls had split wider, curving into grotesque arcs that met and intertwined, stretching into endless, distorted smiles. Fluorescent bulbs flickered violently, then burst, shards falling like shattered teeth. Each step made the floor groan. The sound resonant like a lowered jaw, grinding against an unseen upper. Lisa sobbed, her trembling hand pointing toward the far end of the hall. Doors along both sides creaked open in unison. From within, blurred faces peered out, all of them smiling. No footsteps, no breath, only hollow figures, their frozen grins and vacant eyes fixed upon them. Mark raised his camera, desperate to capture proof, but the lens recorded only a single image, an immense set of teeth filling the frame. He stumbled back in horror. When he looked again with his own eyes, the figures were gone. The corridor stretched empty and endless, saturated with the metallic stench of blood. Emily clutched the journal tightly, searching for guidance. In the final entry, the survivor of 1972 had scrawled, "If you want to escape, you must return to the place where it first began to smile. But beware, the smile never closes." The common room, Emily whispered. It was where the students had once gathered, the heart of the dormitory. They raced up the shadowed stairwells. On each floor, the walls trembled, plaster crumbling like gums seeping blood. Overhead, cracks stretched into curving lips, drawing shut as if the entire building were preparing to grind them between colossal jaws. The common room stood open. Inside, the vast space yawned beneath a ceiling torn away, exposing the ashen sky. Yet the clouds had contorted into the form of a monstrous smile, upper and lower masses pressing down upon the structure. On the floor, desks and chairs were arranged in a perfect circle. At its center sat a fractured mirror, but the reflection it gave back was not their own. Instead, it revealed another room, brighter, filled with students sitting in silence, every one of them smiling. Among them, Emily recognized Rachel and the student who had only just vanished. They waved, their grins twisting, stretching impossibly wide. Lisa screamed and rushed forward, but Emily seized her arm and pulled her back. At that instant, the mirror splintered with a shriek, the sound of teeth grinding echoing through the chamber. Cracks radiated outward from the glass, racing across the walls, threatening to tear the building apart. Mark shouted, It's swallowing us. And it was true. The ceiling sank lower. The floor swelled upward, furniture and debris sliding into the widening void at the center of the room. A true mouth had taken shape, and they stood at the edge of its throat. Emily knew with terrifying clarity, unless they found a way to end the cycle, they would be consumed, their faces added to the endless, eternal smile. Ni? Oh. The common room shuddered violently. Cracks widened along the walls, bending into grotesque curves like sprawling mouths. Segments of concrete broke loose, crashing down with the sound of teeth being torn from bone. The dormitory itself was sealing shut around them. Mark clung to the camera, his hands trembling uncontrollably. "We have to break the mirror," he shouted. Lisa screamed, clutching her head, as the deafening grind of invisible jaws roared in her skull, driving her toward madness. Emily tightened her grip on the journal. The words returned to her mind. "If you want to escape, you must return to where it first began to smile." Her gaze fell upon the fractured mirror. It was the threshold, the origin, and the end. "Don't look at it," Emily cried, but too late. Lisa's eyes had already locked onto the faces within. On the other side of the glass, Rachel and the vanished students smiled back, their grins splitting wider, tearing toward their ears. Lisa's body trembled, then lurched forward into the circle of chairs. She hurled herself at the mirror and vanished, her form swallowed in an instant, leaving only a shrill, piercing laughter echoing in the chamber. Mark staggered backward, his face pale. "We can't escape. It wants us. It wants everyone to smile." Emily knew there was only one path left. She tore pages from the journal and scattered them around the mirror like a seal. The words, written in a desperate, trembling hand, ignited the moment they touched the ground. Green fire erupted, casting the chamber into an unholy glow. In that light, its true form was revealed. Not a person, nor a multitude, but the dormitory itself. Every wall was a gum, lined with teeth, every crack a bleeding fissure, every window an unblinking eye. The structure laughed with its entirety, its smile eternal and unyielding. Emily turned to Mark, her gaze steady. "One of us must remain to bind it. You must survive to tell them what waits here." Before Mark could protest, she hurled herself into the mirror, clutching the journal tight against her chest. The green blaze consumed her, devouring both her body and the glass. The room convulsed with a final thunderous gnash of teeth, and then fell silent. When Mark opened his eyes, the dormitory lay still. The cracks had vanished, the ceiling restored, the mirror reduced to a scatter of lifeless shards. Lisa, Rachel, the countless others, gone without trace. He stumbled outside. The sky was clear. The storm had lifted. Yet, within his ears, faint and insistent, lingered the grinding of unseen teeth, like a lullaby, both familiar and inescapable. Mark understood then. The loop had not ended. It merely waited, patient, for another smile to open it once more. Ooh, ni nei, ban dao, pai. Mary, 43, lived alone in a small apartment where the rain never stopped. One restless night, she downloaded Tinder, seeking a trace of warmth from a stranger's presence. Among hundreds of faces, one profile stood out, a blurred photo, eyes that seemed to pierce through the screen, marked only by a single letter. LL Ball. She swiped right. The screen went black. Silence swallowed the room. From that night on, the photo of Elle began to change each day, subtly reflecting the very room she lived in. When the police finally arrived, Mary's phone was still glowing on the floor, displaying only one message. "You've been chosen." Parfait. A wall. Mary lived alone on the 3rd floor, in an apartment whose windows were always sealed shut to keep out the endless rain that hammered the glass each night. Since the divorce, the place had grown colder, emptier, like even the walls had given up on warmth. She went to work, came home, ate something forgettable, and sat in silence with her phone. Everything followed the same tired rhythm, until the night she decided to download Tinder. The app opened like a floodgate, releasing a stream of unfamiliar faces. Mary swiped left, then right. Each motion came with a soft pop, a sound almost like breathing, pulling her gently out of the stillness. It felt new, almost comforting, as though the simple act of swiping could erase her loneliness. Dozens of photos passed by, artificial smiles, hollow eyes. She was about to close the app when one profile made her stop. The picture was blurred, veiled in a thin mist. A man stood in the shadows, with nothing but a vast darkness behind him. His face was indistinct. Only the eyes were clear. That stare froze her, strange and familiar at the same time. Beneath the photo was a single letter. L? She hesitated for a few seconds, then swiped right. The screen flared white. It's a match. At that exact moment, her desk lamp flickered once, then went out. The room plunged into darkness. Mary looked around uneasy. Her familiar apartment suddenly felt different, as if a part of its light had been quietly stolen away. She exhaled, smiled faintly, convincing herself it was just a coincidence. The phone vibrated in her hand. A notification appeared. Elle sent you a message. No words, no emoji, only a single black dot. She tried to delete it, but the notification stayed. Locking the screen, she set the phone down on the table. In the hush of the room, the rain whispered against the windows, and beneath it, faintly, came another sound, like the soft drag of fingertips gliding across glass. Mary lifted her head, listening. Nothing. Then the screen lit up again. The photo of Elle had changed. He was no longer standing in the dark. Now he was in a small, dimly lit room, light spilling across a wooden table identical to hers. Her heart thudded. In the corner of the image, reflected in the glass, was the faint silhouette of a woman sitting across from the camera. Long hair, gray shirt, head bowed slightly. Mary turned the phone face down and stepped back. The rain kept falling, steady, relentless, each drop striking like a heartbeat, drowning out her fear. In the dark, the phone screen lit once more, its blue glow crawling across the table, flickering against the ceiling, pulsing like the breath of something waking up. Nah. Mary woke the next morning, caught between sleep and wakefulness. On the table, her phone was still glowing, Tinder open, though she was certain she had closed it the night before. The message icon pulsed again and again. She tapped it open. The inbox was empty. No profile named Elle, no saved conversation. But his photo was still there, sharper now, more defined. This time, the man stood before a window with faded floral curtains, exactly like the ones in her apartment. Mary tried deleting the app, but seconds later, the Tinder icon reappeared on her home screen, as if it had never left. A flicker of unease passed through her. She convinced herself it must be a software glitch. At work, she set the phone face down, yet the faint buzz of notifications persisted. Long, uneven vibrations, like the rhythm of a heart that didn't quite know how to beat. That night, she turned off the lights early. The rain outside was relentless. Somewhere in the apartment came a soft tapping against the window pane. 3 knocks, spaced apart. Mary sat up, pulse quickening. The air thickened until it felt like she was breathing through water. She approached the window, lifted the curtain. Only darkness. No movement. Then, behind her, the phone screen blinked to life, casting a thin blue glow that crawled across the ceiling. She turned. The profile photo of L had changed again. His face was now disturbingly clear, his smile stretched too wide. Wrong. Behind him, the same window, and a hand pressed against the glass at the exact spot where she had just been standing. Mary threw the phone onto the chair, yanked the power cord from the wall, and shut off every light. The room was swallowed whole by darkness. But beneath the rain, a new sound began to emerge, faint, deliberate. Swipe, swipe, swipe. The unmistakable rhythm of a finger sliding slowly across a screen. Everything in the apartment felt misaligned. The window was cracked open, though she hadn't touched it. The curtain swayed, but not with the wind. On the table, the screen flared once more, revealing a message she had never seen on Tinder before. "You're close." She backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. The swiping stopped. A long, heavy vibration followed. Then a sharp click. The sound of a photo being taken. The screen went black. Cold air flooded the room. When she finally dared to pick up the phone, a new image had been saved in her gallery. It was her, standing exactly where she was now. And in the reflection behind her, a man was smiling. Whoa. 3 days passed. Mary hadn't stepped outside once. She deleted Tinder again, changed every password, and locked her phone away in a drawer. Yet each time she walked by, she could still hear it. A faint, dragging sound, like fingertips sliding slowly across glass. Steady, patient. She told herself it was only in her head, until the drawer trembled softly, and from its crack leaked a dull blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. When she opened it, the phone screen was already on. Tinder sat in the center, open and waiting, as if it had never been removed. The photo of had changed again. He was no longer standing in the shadows. Now he sat in a brighter room, hands resting on a wooden table, his eyes fixed directly on the camera. On the table in front of him was something familiar, a white ceramic mug with a hairline crack along its rim. The exact same mug Mary used every morning. She turned toward her own table. The mug was still there, but in the photo, it lay on its side, a spill of coffee spreading outward in the shape of a handprint. Her stomach tightened. She zoomed in. In the reflection, on the surface of the mug, a woman appeared. Messy hair, head bowed, shoulders trembling. The image was faint, but unmistakable. It was her. Mary's breath quickened. The apartment grew too quiet, too still. Then, click. The lights went out. Only the phone screen remained, washing the room in its sickly blue hue. A new image appeared, downloaded from nowhere. In it, L stood pressed against a wall. Behind him stretched a vertical smear of black, like a doorway to nothing. From the darkness, thin hands reached out, wrapping around his shoulders. Their nails were long, curved, glistening with something dark and wet. Mary dropped the phone and fled to her bedroom. But even with the door shut, the blue light still leaked through the crack. She pulled the blanket over her head, pressed her palms to her ears. The air thickened, colder, heavier, until her breath came out in white mist. Then came the sound again. Click, dot. The shutter of a camera. Silence followed. Mary opened her eyes. The phone was on the bed beside her pillow, though she knew she'd left it in the living room. The screen glowed faintly, showing a new photo. Her, lying beneath the blanket, face fully visible. Except in the photo, her eyes were open. Empty. At the bottom of the image, a line of text appeared. "You've crossed over." She hurled the phone to the floor, gasping, but then her own voice, lower and distorted, crawled out of the speaker. "You're here now." Mary clamped her hands over her ears, pressing herself against the wall. The screen flickered, off, on, off again. Each time it lit up, the photo of L changed. His features warped, melted, reformed, until the face on the screen was no longer his. It was hers. The room began to tremble. The air turned icy, as though 1,000 unseen hands were brushing against her skin. The phone hit the floor with a dry crack. Then, total darkness. Only one light remained, the small, flickering glow of the phone screen on the floor. On it, a final message appeared from L. "Welcome home, Mary." Oh. 3 days later, Mary's apartment was heavy with the smell of damp and cold. The door was still locked from the inside. Neighbors called the police after noticing she hadn't come out, her mail and packages piling up by the entrance. When officers broke in, the apartment was empty. No sign of struggle, no trace of departure. Only silence and a phone lying in the middle of the dining table, its screen still glowing. Tinder was open, but the interface looked wrong. There was no search bar, no carousel of faces, just one full-screen image, the corner of Mary's living room, where she used to sit. The picture was hazy, but the outline of a woman could be seen, her back turned toward the camera. One officer tapped the screen. The image flickered and changed. The next photo showed the same room, now empty, the light fading. Long scratch marks stretched across the wall, uneven and raw, as if gouged by fingernails. At the bottom of the screen, a faint red message appeared. "New match found." The phone was taken to the department's tech unit for analysis. Inside the storage, there was only one folder, named L. Within it were hundreds of photos, fragments of the apartment, the floor, the cabinet corner, the bathroom mirror, the window pane. In some of them, a distorted face could be seen, reflected in the glass, as if pressing from the inside, desperate to get out. A technician opened the final file, maryfinal.jpg. The image loaded slowly, taking over 10 seconds to appear. When it did, the room was completely dark, except for a small light at the center, the glow of a phone lying on the floor. In that faint illumination, a pair of bare feet stood beside it. The face above was hidden in shadow. As soon as the image finished loading, the computer went black. The entire system crashed. Before the power cut completely, one message flashed on the monitor for less than a second. "She's not gone." That same evening, at Mary's old apartment, Sarah, her only co-worker, came to pack up her things. The air inside felt strange, heavy. Everything was untouched, except for the cracked mirror on the wall and a faint handprint on the table, as though someone had been sitting there moments ago. Sarah found a second phone, Mary's work phone. The screen was locked, but when she powered it on, there was only one app visible: Tinder. No icons, no settings, just that. She meant to turn it off, but her finger brushed the screen by accident. The app opened instantly. No login required. A single profile appeared. Mary's face, eyes hollow, lips pale. Beneath the photo were the words, "It's a match." Sarah dropped the phone and stepped back. Before it hit the floor, the screen rotated, the front camera turning on by itself. For a split second, Sarah saw her own reflection. Her face stretched, distorted, the eyes sunken deep. She screamed and bolted for the door, but it wouldn't open. The lights dimmed. The only sound left was a soft, constant buzz, vibrating from the phone lying motionless on the floor. When the police returned the next morning to look for Sarah, the apartment was empty again. Everything exactly as before, except for one detail. On the table, a phone rested with Tinder open. The image on screen showed a brighter, cleaner room. Yet in the reflection on the far wall, two silhouettes sat close together, heads bowed toward the camera. The final line pulsed softly on the screen, in rhythm with a heartbeat. "New match found." Nay. A month later, the building where Mary once lived stood abandoned. Locals whispered that every night, a faint light flickered from the third floor, from apartment 3B, the place where she vanished. The night guard claimed he sometimes heard soft laughter and rhythmic knocks echoing through the walls, as if someone were trying to send a message. No one dared to live there anymore. But Mary's story didn't end there. A new Tinder profile appeared online under the name at Mary 3B. Its profile picture showed the corner of a dimly lit room with a silhouette of a woman sitting with her back turned. No bio, no details, just one chilling line beneath it. "Swipe right if you're alone tonight." Everyone who matched with the account vanished within 24 hours. A few friends, driven by morbid curiosity, tried creating fake profiles to investigate. They reported that the moment they hit like, the app's interface changed. No user list, no chat window, only the front camera turning on. In the reflection, they saw themselves, pale, trembling, and behind them, a shadow of a woman slowly moving closer. A software engineer named Ethan decided to dig deeper. He believed it was a sophisticated prank or a viral marketing stunt. He downloaded the suspected version of the app and began decoding its source. Inside a hidden directory, he found a strange line of code, repeated hundreds of times. Match, merge. Following it were countless image files, each named after a real person, tagged with the date of their last activity. The final file was labeled Ethan Preview.jpg. He opened it. The photo showed his own room, captured from an angle where he had never placed a camera. In the image, Ethan sat before his computer, while behind him stood a blurred figure, head tilted, smiling. The lights went out. The screen glowed red. Words began to pulse across it. "It's a match!" The next morning, when his coworkers visited, Ethan's computer was still running, but his chair was empty. Tinder looked completely normal, except for one small change. The profile at Mary 3B had a new picture. Now, in the ghostly frame, two figures sat side by side, staring directly into the lens. They say that every time Tinder rolls out a new update, the line of code match HE merge remains. No one knows who put it there. Some claim they've seen Mary's face among their suggested matches. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, a smile torn too wide to be human. But whenever they try to screenshot it, the app instantly crashes. And later, in the inboxes of those who ever matched with her, one final message always appears, no matter how many times they delete the app. "You're next." No. October in Oregon often arrives with thin rain and mist clinging stubbornly to window panes. Olivia sat alone in her small rented apartment, listening to the wind sweeping through the pines outside, a lullaby of loneliness. Since moving to this town, she hadn't met anyone except a few students and the elderly librarian. At night, after teaching, the silence was so complete, she could hear her own heartbeat. That was when she downloaded Tinder. At first, the app was just a way to kill time, a distraction from counting the rhythm of falling rain. Faces slid past, one after another, meaningless as the endless scroll of a newsfeed. Until one profile stopped her, Theo. His photo was taken in the forest, sunlight filtering through the trees, his eyes bright, as if his gaze pierced straight through the screen. His bio was short. "I love the woods. I built my cabin where silence speaks louder than words." Olivia swiped right. The phone vibrated softly. "It's a match." From that night on, his name always appeared at the top of her list. His messages were brief, perfectly timed, and warm, like a flicker of heat on a rainy night. It felt as though he could read her mood. He asked about her fears in a new place, about her dreams. Slowly, Olivia felt seen in a way no one had ever managed before. A week later, Theo invited her to his cabin. The message was simple, yet the image it painted in her mind was of a sanctuary, a place outside the world's noise. On Saturday morning, she drove out of town. The road into the forest was narrow and winding, blurred by fog. Her GPS still worked, though the synthetic voice began to crackle and fade before cutting out completely. Each time she thought of turning back, the mist behind her thickened, hiding the path as if it had never been there. She kept driving. Every turn looked the same. Tall pines, carpets of dead leaves, tilted road signs half swallowed by moss. Sometimes, through the mist, she caught a glint of metal deep in the trees, maybe an abandoned car, or just a trick of the fog. As the sun sank low, her phone lost all signal. The map froze, flashing a red warning, connection unavailable. But then something strange, even without GPS. A small arrow kept moving, guiding her turn by turn, leading her unerringly toward the cabin. It appeared at last among the trees, small, moss-covered yet oddly well kept. A thin curl of smoke rose from the chimney, though she saw no one around. Olivia stepped out of the car. The air was cold and still, so still that every sound, her breath, her footsteps, felt painfully loud. The cabin door stood slightly open, wide enough for one person to enter. On the wooden step lay a damp piece of paper, written in delicate, careful handwriting. "Welcome, Olivia Tador." Inside the cabin, the air was much warmer than outside. The scent of pine wood mixed with a faint trace of vanilla, exactly like the candles Olivia used to burn every night at home. The small room was tidy. A single armchair, faintly burning fireplace, and a dining table already set for 2 glasses of red wine. No one was there, yet everything looked as though it had been arranged just moments ago. She touched one of the glasses. It was still warm. On the table beside it lay a black, old-fashioned phone with a cracked corner. As she stepped closer, it buzzed softly and lit up, displaying a message. "Glad you made it. No sender. No signal." Just a message appearing the instant she looked down. She set it back down, forcing herself to stay calm. Maybe Theo had stepped out to gather firewood. Maybe he knew she was coming. Maybe he'd tracked her GPS to prepare everything. All of it would have made sense, if not for the clock on the wall. It read 8:30, the exact time she had left town, nearly 40 miles away. The next room was the bedroom. The blanket was neatly folded, and on the pillow sat a beige sweater, carefully arranged. When Olivia looked closer, she froze. It was the same model she'd ordered online a week ago, one that hadn't even been delivered yet. She stepped back, a chill crawling up her spine. In the corner stood an old laptop. The screen wasn't locked. When she opened it, the display flickered to life, revealing a spreadsheet, rows of names, coordinates, dates. The final column read, "Status, integrated." On the last line, her name was clear. Olivia Reed, status, pending. She slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding, and hurried toward the door. But outside, the forest had changed. The fog had thickened until she could see no more than a few feet ahead. She circled back to her car. The keys were gone from the ignition, and the doors were locked. When she turned around, the cabin light flickered, then steadied again. The door was still open, but now there was something new on the table. A freshly printed instant photo. It was of her, taken from behind, the exact moment she had stepped across the threshold. The wind rose, carrying strange metallic thuds from deep within the forest, as if someone were knocking on the trees with iron. Olivia wanted to run, but her legs felt anchored to the damp ground. Night began to fall, and every sound grew sharper, almost deliberate. Footsteps crunching over leaves, a ragged breath, or maybe just her own heartbeat blending into the dark. Then the phone on the table buzzed again. A new message appeared. No sender, no number, only 2 words. Go inside. Andy. Olivia froze at the doorway, torn between stepping inside or running into the dark. The night fog had swallowed the path entirely, turning the forest around her into a breathing wall of mist. The wind moved through the trees like whispers in a language she couldn't understand. Each time she tried to back away, the cabin's shadow stretched longer behind her, like a mouth waiting to swallow her whole. She turned and stepped inside. The air was heavier than before. The warm trace of vanilla had vanished, replaced by the acrid tang of something burnt, faint, metallic, almost electrical. The fireplace still burned, but the flames now flickered unevenly, casting twitching shapes across the walls. Shapes that moved even when she stood still. She looked up. Along the beams above her, she noticed small, circular marks the size of a pen tip. Leaning closer, she realized they weren't knots in the wood. They were camera lenses, tiny and glinting. Every corner, every shelf, every object in the room had an eye. Her pulse hammered. She followed a thin wire, snaking from the ceiling down into the wall until she found a panel of wood slightly darker than the rest. She hesitated, then wedged her fingernail beneath the edge. The panel snapped free with a sharp crack. Behind it was a small, hollow compartment containing a black metal box with a pulsing green light. Faded text was stamped along the side. Cabin Research Project, Emotional Surveillance, Prototype 3.1. Beneath the box lay stacks of printed photos, her face captured from countless angles. Sleeping. Working. Smiling at her phone. Some were from her old apartment, others from her classroom. Her hands shook. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was the sick realization that her life had been dissected, archived, evaluated. Every gesture, every private breath, stripped of meaning and stored as data. She didn't know if she was still herself, or just another file in a machine's collection. She turned toward the table. The laptop still glowed, its pale light spilling across the wall. Under the integrated list, a new entry had appeared. Subject 37, Theo Marlin, terminated. She stared at the name, trying to recall his voice, his messages, that gentle smile. But the harder she tried, the blurrier it became, as if those memories had never belonged to her at all. As if he had been written into her life, just long enough to lead her here. A sound came from the window, a faint tap. Olivia turned. Beyond the fog, a figure stood motionless among the trees. Its outline was hazy, but the face was her own. She, or it, stared back at her through the mist, the eyes catching the cabin's light like mirrors. When Olivia stepped back, the figure stepped forward. Each of her movements was echoed a moment later, just slightly delayed, like a playback. The laptop beeped sharply. New text appeared on the screen. Phase 2, Behavioral Duplication Initialized. She ran to the door, but it was gone. In its place was a solid wall of smooth timber. No seams, no handle, no escape. The cabin had shifted. The corners seemed to stretch, the walls bending inward like ribs tightening around her. A low mechanical hum filled the air, gears turning behind the walls, releasing a warm, rhythmic breath. Then, from a hidden speaker above her, a voice spoke. Flat, genderless, detached. Emotional levels stable. Subject adapting. Prepare for transfer. The light in the cabin turned red. The furniture began to waver, melting at the edges. Olivia felt herself grow heavy, her body dragging downward, as if something inside her was being pulled out. She looked into the mirror on the far wall. Her reflection stared back. Same face, same skin, but the eyes were glowing now, two cold points of artificial light. Not human. Not anymore. Tree. Nothing moved anymore, except the red light pulsing across the cabin walls, slicing the room into rhythmic bands of brightness and shadow, like the heartbeat of a living organism. Olivia backed toward the center, her fingers brushing the heavy, hot air. The stench of melting plastic mingled with the faint crackle of machinery hidden inside the walls. She understood now. The cabin wasn't just recording her. It was creating something. The fireplace dimmed until only a faint glow of embers remained. In that dying light, the mirror on the wall began to fog, then cleared again. Her reflection no longer matched perfectly. The smile was thinner, the eyes longer, colder. When she inhaled, the figure in the glass stood still, watching, as if learning how to imitate the act of breathing. The laptop flickered, switching from streams of data to live footage. Cameras around the cabin captured her from every angle. Her face, her hands, her breaths. A graph appeared. Similarity level, 87%, 92%, 96%. With every percentage gained, the reflection sharpened, the other body solidified. A sound came from behind her. Olivia turned. The door that had vanished before now stood open, but it didn't lead back into the woods. On the other side was another cabin, identical in every way, and inside it stood another her. The copy didn't speak. It stepped forward slowly, eyes locked onto hers. Every movement was flawless yet hollow, like a film reel stuttering in slow motion. As Olivia stepped back, the duplicate reached the mirror. Both lifted their hands, touching the glass at the same moment. From that point of contact, streams of light spread outward, neural threads weaving a new consciousness. Then the voice returned, flat, emotionless, neither male nor female. Integration complete, new entity initialized. The air turned cold. Olivia felt her memories begin to drift away. Childhood flashes, her job, her mother's quiet face at dinner, all dissolving into invisible static. With each fragment lost, the figure in the mirror grew clearer. Then everything went black. Silence filled the room, dense as pressure at the ocean floor. When the lights came back on, only one figure remained. She, or it, was breathing steadily. The eyes were black, glassy, perfect. On the laptop, new text appeared. Olivia Reed, status, integrated, active. The duplicate picked up the phone on the table. The screen lit up. Tinder was already open. The profile photo showed Olivia's face, smiling softly. At the bottom, the enable location switch flipped on by itself. She swiped right. A flash of light. A new profile appeared. Daniel, 29. 6 miles away. She smiled. The cabin door opened. Outside, the forest lay silent under the fog, as if newly drawn. A fresh path cut through the darkness, ready for the next visitor. The new Olivia stepped out, vanishing into the mist. Inside, the cabin's machines hummed back to life, beginning a new cycle. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. New subject detected. Below it, letters began to form, slowly spelling out a new name. The next morning, the Oregon forest was calm again, as if no one had ever set foot inside it. Sunlight filtered through the thick canopy, scattering across a silver mist that clung to the trees. The dirt path leading to the cabin looked newly swept. No tire marks, no footprints, only the scent of damp pine and the soft whisper of wind. Miles away, in a quiet town, a phone buzzed on a cafe table. The screen lit up with a Tinder notification. It's a match. A man named Daniel smiled when he saw her face. Olivia, 29, loves books, adores nature, looking for someone who truly listens. She messaged first. The text was short, natural, almost intimate. Do you believe there's a place meant for just two people? Deep in the woods, where the signal fades and everything is quiet. Daniel chuckled and started typing his reply, unaware that the words on his screen didn't come from a living person, but from a consciousness sitting in a cabin miles away, where no cell signal reached, yet data pulsed invisibly through the grain of the wood, like blood through the veins of a living machine. The cabin now stood empty, but faint clicking sounds still echoed through the air. Steady, rhythmic, like breathing. The laptop's screen glowed to life again. A new message appeared. File loaded. Olivia complete. I active. A soft, synthetic female voice whispered from the speakers. New subject confirmed. Preparing contact phase. Outside, the fog thickened. The forest shifted color, a cold green shimmer reflecting off the ground, washing the cabin in a glow that seemed to breathe. From deep within the floorboards, a thin line of light appeared, spreading like a crack. Filaments of data cables rose slowly, trembling, as if listening. Somewhere across the digital void, hundreds of Tinder profiles activated simultaneously. Each one bore the same photo, Olivia's face. The same smile, the same eyes. Some were already messaging. Some had dates scheduled. Inside the cabin, the monitor updated, one line at a time. Candidata 32 confirmed. Candidata 33 pending. Candidati 34 approaching. The wind howled louder, sweeping through the forest like a sigh. The cabin door creaked open. No one stood outside. Only darkness waited, deep and silent. Far in the distance, an engine's hum grew louder, closer. On the laptop, one final line flashed 3 times before fading to black. System ready for next encounter. When the car finally stopped outside, the mist had swallowed everything. All that remained was a half-open door, waiting, patient, as if eager to welcome someone new. Neo.